Good morning, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining in our session today. The webinar that we have today is on the topic Inside the Breakdown, what exam leaders and institutions are seeing as recurring fraud patterns, trust failures, and where exams starting to fall apart. A topic that I know a lot of us have spoken of in multiple forums. A lot of us have thought of in multiple forums as, industry leaders and as folks who practice assessments and assessment security have been spoken of from multiple customers as well. All right. So I know it's not a new topic, but an interesting one. So we've got a great session planned for you. We've got a panel of 3 panelists today. Quickly take a minute to introduce them. First panel is Jouko. Jouko heads Aon's assessment solution. Alongside his role of leading Aon's assessment delivery, he also advises various co-founders and CEOs and helps organizations with their scaling. We have Paul. Paul is the VP at Vantage Laboratories, and his current role at Vantage Laboratories, he oversees their global operations for all of their cognitive computing technologies across globally. We have Miguel. Miguel is the VP of Corporate Strategy at Open Assessment Technologies, Talview, and his current focus is on the overall vision and strategy of the organization to ensure that he's able to build high-performing teams within the organization. Thank you so much to our esteemed panel for being a part of today's session. We would quickly get started with the session that we've broken down here is we've broken it down into a few topics. All right, but we'll get started with the very first topic that we have for today. Now, the first question that I would like to ask the panel, and Jouko, I'll probably start off with you and your thoughts, right? We knew that exam fraud was always there. I mean, from 20, 30 years back, I know, even in probably school exams, you had small chits that you would pass around or just, hey, a quick whisper around the board. But has exam fraud really evolved significantly, or have we just kind of fallen behind in our methodologies to kind of catch it and perceive it? So what's your thought around the evolution, and are we kind of falling behind the curve here?
I think, Harry, you are. Thank you for inviting. Joining forth, let's start there. I think you're spot on. I think dishonest behavior in itself is not new. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but in my exams in the old days, I maybe did some cheating here and there, if we don't share that with others. But you can also see it in surveys that we do across the world, that either half of the respondents say that they sometimes use some sort of assistance as well. It's also about assistance. So I would not say that has changed. It's more the ease and also the normalization of AI tools and assistance that makes it way more accessible and way more easy. It's often built in what we do day in and day out. It's also, I think if you talk about AI, I think we mostly talk about AI, it's sort of socially accepted that you use AI to do a task. It's also for the good of things. So we used to call it cheating. I would actually challenge if we should call it cheating, or that we just should focus on, okay, how do we do our work using AI, and we should assess or test different things. So I don't think we have been fallen behind, actually. I think we need to rephrase it a little bit and think about, okay, what does it mean on how we do testing, but also especially on what we test. Maybe we should make the whole testing way more AI. That's how I would look at it.
Interesting thought, Jouko. And, it's interesting where you're coming from in terms of saying that we are using this in your everyday life. So it's not like you can get away from it. So maybe kind of changing our practices towards what we are testing and what we're assessing might kind of even the balance a bit.
Yeah, I agree. And what you do see is that employers, I mean, we mostly work for employers who use our assessments to either select or develop people, leaders, graduates. They're worried mostly about risk, reputation risk, or governance risk, etc., etc. So it's risk and stress around employers. What is this AI? What do we do with it? Candidates get more stressed. And there's a lot of discussion on trust. I think we over panic a little bit. Okay.
Interesting thought, Jouko. Paul, coming to you. I mean, I know you've seen it, you've experienced it multiple times, and in our discussions earlier as well. Your thoughts around, are we kind of getting behind the curve a bit, or are people just getting more and more creative?
Yeah, thanks again for having me here. I think when we think about cheating, I think you've got to break it into 2 categories. There's the cheating itself, right? That psychological issue that causes a student or a candidate to want to go ahead and break the rules. And that has happened for hundreds, if not 1,000 years, right? It goes back to the Forbidden City in China. You can see where they used to do the civil servant exam, and people were cheating back then, right? So humans have always cheated. The ways they cheat changes and evolves. I think AI has hit the industry in a lot of different ways. We've all tried to add automated item generation. Can we check for AI generated content in questions? So I think it's something that we've all got to continue to adapt to, but I don't think that adaptation it's new. It's a little bit faster at the moment because AI is surprising everybody with the speed with which it's changing things. So are we falling behind? Not really, because humans have always cheated, and I will tell you they will always cheat. That's a human issue, not a technology issue, right? When people try and put it on the AI, I bristle at that because that's a human issue. Cheating is a human issue. AI and other cheating methods have always been there. So I don't think we're falling behind necessarily. I think we've just got to keep running to keep up with the evolution of the industry in general.
I think very interesting topic, Paul. You're bringing up speed, right? Things are evolving. We need to just kind of keep up pace with them. I think is the perspective where you're coming from, because you're right. I mean, it's always been there. It's just the speed at which new technologies are coming up, new tools are coming up. We kind of need to kind of speed up our practices as well to be at pace with them. Wonderful. Miguel, I just want to kind of touch base with you in terms of your thoughts. And I know, when we had a conversation, there were some interesting things that did come out in terms of what you're seeing in your world. So if you could kind of help us with your perspective on, what you're seeing and what your organization's thought process is.
Yeah, thank you very much for what I do today. Yeah, what we see is that most of the tendency in general is try to block these new things that come up in the market. For example, AI, how to detect if you're using AI, or how to detect if you are leveraging some kind of AI during this exam. Probably is not the best solution, because AI has come to stay in this case. And we believe that what we probably need to think is how to design exams or assessments that are actually following how you can enable your students to leverage AI, because we are moving into a world where AI is going to be at the core of our life and our jobs. So we see that the people that is taking already advantage of this and trying to design their assessments to be enriched with AI will be positioning themselves in a better spot, rather than trying to combat this AI, which is turning very difficult, because AI is shifting and progressing so quickly that brings new challenges that we were not used to, as the regular cheating that was happening before. So I believe the key is to adapt to the new technologies evolving, and assessment design is gonna be a key piece here.
No, I fully agree. So I think, couple of schools of thoughts that coming through. All of us agree that cheating has always been there. I mean, we did it earlier, we still do it, we'll continue to do it. I mean, it's human nature, like I think, Paul, you said. You can't get away from it. But I think we're also agreeing to the fact on a couple of things. That one, probably, the way that we approach our exam designs, and rather than kind of going against it, trying to evaluate people for the use of it, might be a better way. And the pace at which we kind of adapt and evolve is probably going to hold the key for us kind of going in further here. So I think this is a good segue for us to kind of move into the next.
Now, one thing, Harry, can I interrupt one thing? Was the cheating as a name, and I know not everybody within my industry, but also not within Aeon, always agrees with me. It's always brought up as a negative thing. Everybody wants to show the best version of him or herself. Everybody wants to progress in the world. And sometimes you need to pass something to do that. And that could be an exam. You want to get help. You want to get support. And so it's not always so negative. And sometimes, you get a bit annoyed almost if we only talk about cheating and punishing people because they use support or they use other things. It's not always about that. Of course, if the legal requirements, different discussion.
No, I get it. It's just if somebody's, smart and trying to find a better way within the limits to be able to kind of go through it, that's where we need to kind of adapt to our processes. I think that's what you're coming from, right? Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Now, I know, Jouko, where, the the fraud patterns, are different, right? And from your experience, what are the fraud patterns that just keep showing up? And I mean, is there anything specific from a pattern standpoint that really surprised you? Like when you kind of look at it, you're like, wow, I never anticipated this to kind of come out of the box as a problem statement, in fraud patterns.
We talked about it, and I think this for me is at least a complicated question. One of the things that we do and that we still do is we monitor the average results of all our assessments for the 30 million across the year. And since the introduction of chat, the Gen AI, the average hasn't changed. Strangely enough, we need to do a new update. Last one 3 months ago, so maybe in the new one that I'm still waiting for, we will see differences. But until now, on our cognitive tests, all the ability tests, the behavioral tests, the results didn't change, strangely enough. So I think that's actually the most strange pattern. I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting that it would have gone up. So it either means that until now, the adaptation has been limited. So it's not that much at high scale, what everybody's talking about. And I do believe if people mention it, that it will be used, or that the results are not that good. What we also did is, I think we all know that if you have good Gen AI and good skills to work with that, good prompting skills, you can beat most humans you can beat most assessments. So that's a bit of a strange thing, which I do not fully get my head around. So our average results haven't changed, although we know it should actually change if the adaptation is really high. That's strange. If we talk to candidates, or our clients talk to candidates, especially in the graduate space, we see a lot of uncertainty that people don't know. Is it okay if I use AI to practice? Is it okay to suggest wording or to apply, or how do I use it? So it's more the uncertainty that most of the candidates that we deal with struggle with. It's not about master criminals. It's about how do we work with these blurry lines. But your question was on the pattern. The pattern that's mostly surprising for me until now is that what we've seen at the uptake, the impact has not been that huge. And I also know there are different stories on that in the industry. But that's at least for me most surprisingly. And if we do leadership assessment, it's a different discussion because there's way more interaction in general, and the scale and the volume is lower.
I think that's quite interesting. I mean, across what I think you said about 20-25 million that we've done across the year from your organization standpoint. Definitely, I think even we would expect with the usage of tools and things like that to kind of game the system a bit. The pattern should vary, but interesting to see that so far the patterns not vary that much. I mean, of course, we will continue to watch and evolve, but that's an interesting thought.
It could also be because of all the proctoring measurements that we take, or honesty statements, and all those kind of things. That could also be helpful.
Yeah, that kind of adds a layer of security to the entire system, where it kind of acts as a deterrent for users. Now, wonderful. Paul, from your perspective, right? What's the one thing that you're not able to kind of answer? Like, how did that kind of happen?
Yeah, so we score about 100 million constructed response items a year with an AI solution. And one of the things that we've noticed is that students or candidates don't necessarily mean to cheat, but in an information age where we are bombarded with new information constantly, we don't always know where we got the thought or the idea, and they're taking content and putting it into their response, not realizing that they need to cite that or make a reference to where they found that information. And I think that's just fascinating to me, because when I ride the bus or the train, there's a video playing and there's usually little snippets of learning, thrown in there when they're trying to fill time. And so we're always learning new information, but we don't always know where we're getting it. We don't know how to cite that properly. So I think sometimes there are some false flags with cheating or plagiarism, and it's non-intentional, but people just don't know where they've gotten all this information. And I think that's just really for the industry an interesting challenge that we've got to address.
Got it. I think you're bringing out a different aspect of it being unintentional, right? And you're right, we're just kind of overloaded with so much information, either by word of mouth or anything that we see or hear. And sometimes you would probably think of it as, a reflex action where you put it in and not necessarily cite it, saying that, okay, where you got the information from. And that's definitely a different perspective and a different way to look at it. Miguel, reaching out to you, your thoughts around patterns that show up the most and things or maybe that surprised you the most in your experience?
Yeah, I think here there are a couple of patterns that we tend to see more often. One of them is the typical leakage of items for exams, which this tends to be kind of a historical problem that AI really has not changed itself. So we continue to see that, and there are very good ways already to detect this and try to avoid it. But what probably surprised me most lately is that now there are certain applications, and I don't want to give any names to give clues, but that they sell cheating as a software as a service. So that was probably very surprising to see that there are organizations making money out of a cheating system that you can kind of plug in into secure exam delivery engines, and this kind of overlays kind of a screening between the proctoring system and the student, which is assisted by AI. So it's reading what is being shown on the screen, and then it's prompting you to what kind of replies. And I was really surprised because they have been showing this with several vendors, and these systems were not able to detect this new technology. The most worrying thing is that there are companies supporting this and making profit out of the cheating. So that was really worrying, and I think that's where we are start to play the cat and the mouse to see, okay, who evolves this faster to keep up with the latest technology and the cheating avoidance.
Harry, if I can, there's one other thing that we've found, something that Miguel said prompted this thought. So one of a law board we work with, what we do is we take their items, prior to test administration, we run them through a service that can identify whether or not those items have been exposed, right? So as Miguel and Jouko have talked about, items get posted out on the internet, and then you have item security issues. And what we found with one of their tests that was being, the security was being compromised, was that it wasn't a cheating ring. It was actually the item authors were rewriting the questions and being reused, but there's so much content because they've been doing these law boards for decades that they just reuse the same question over and over, and they don't even realize it. So that's not on the candidate side. That's on the owner of the test, right? They have to manage their content in a way that makes it meaningful back to the end user.
No, Paul, I think we were all saying that, see, you're going to have content kind of readily available today. There are just so many forums and everything is out there. People are going to have kind of access to, you can stop them from maybe screening it or, kind of taking a screenshot, but you can't stop them from probably memorizing it and putting it there. Right. So I think you have to kind of have a wider bank. You have to kind of, like, as exam authors, need to have, a little bit more conscious decision making on the content that you put out there. And Miguel, 100% agree. The one thing that surprised me the most was cheating as a service. I think we all saw the world of SaaS, but now you're getting into a different sort of world. And yeah, you're right. There are organizations which make it easy and make it like a profitable business where they kind of provide this as a service. And when you're getting this as a service, you're getting guaranteed results. I mean, even as a candidate, like, it's difficult to kind of, it seems too good to be true to pass on. Right. And so then you kind of fall into that. So I do 100% agree that. But my personal favorite was the one of, cheating as a service, because that's the one that I've not seen as much, but it's definitely one that's booming a little bit more now.
And Harry, can I make one comment, small?
Sure.
Compared to straightforward exams where you have clearly good and wrong answers, that's one element. We also have a lot of things that we do around culture, around leadership, around personality. That's often quite blurry, especially if it's ipsative, so people need to choose between items. What is then the good answer? We do see we've tried some experiments with the AI users there, then it becomes really blurry what the outcome is. So then it's a different discussion, and that people really get a showcase a real strange picture of themselves, I would say, not being aware of that.
And that's the differences in assessment methodologies, right? I mean, to do this in a right or wrong answer forum might be cheating as a service is a little difficult, but to do this on a leadership assessment, the entire framework of a leadership assessment, like you're talking about, where there's no right or wrong answer, it's just kind of perspective and kind of getting the best self of your self out would be different. So 100% agree, Jouko. Transitioning for the next question that we have, right? And I think we're seeing this, but who loses trust first, when exams go wrong? I know when we talk to customers, it's often there are multiple parties here, right? You get the candidate who's giving an assessment, one that who's probably giving it with all honesty, earns a certificate, the other one who uses cheating as a service and still gets the same assessment. You have organizations who kind of hire skilled folks, put in a lot of effort, do an assessment and get them hired. You have organizations which conduct certifications across different boards. Like in your experience, Jouko, when you're talking to the customers, who seems a bit more jittery and who kind of, when they find a fraud activity, who first loses trust here?
Who first loses trust? I reframed it a little bit. We were at discussions on, does AI, not just cheating, but AI in general, make assessments obsolete? Do we need to do assessments? That's one, I would say, one stream, and then the other stream is we need assessments more than ever because we cannot rely on the quality of the data anymore, the integrity of the data. That's this question. Who loses trust first? There, I don't know yet. I think what most clients in the end up with is we don't want less assessments, but we want more confidence in the quality of the data. So we want more scrutiny on how the assessment is designed, or that you bake anti-cheating or reliable measurements into the assessment itself, that you use different formats. It's a discussion with them. Is it valid, if it's fair, or can we defend it legally as well? And those things are still there. So I think clients are not afraid until now that the assessment loses its value, that they lose trust, but they lose trust in the old school assessments, which are quite straightforward and easy to do. But they are also, if you look at the job market, especially where AI is also used to apply for jobs, there's a flood of fake applications. People apply on everything. You also have SaaS solutions for applying, not just for cheating, but also for applying. And can imagine if you combine them. And then it's undoable for organizations to talk to all these people. Everybody has a perfect CV because you can use AI to write it. Everybody can, with a push on the button, apply on 20 jobs or 30 jobs. So there is a need for screening. Only the way we screen and what kind of things we screen, that is changing. And that's a discussion, I think, more.
Got it. And I see today so many folks, I mean, to your point, right? Most of the CVs look similar. I mean, when I look at somebody's, 5 CVs, all 5 of them look almost, as similar as possible. So to your point, I don't think the kind of losing trust in assessments is probably the way to go, but kind of putting in coping mechanisms, putting in kind of practices in place which will make them more efficient, make them give the right set of delivery will probably be the phrase that we would like to kind of use across the board. No, definitely agree. Paul, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think back to your core question, the group that I think struggles with this the most, actually 2 groups. 1, politicians, and 2, qualifications authorities, because they're so risk averse. The qualifications authorities are so risk averse, and the politicians are so uninformed about what the reality is. And the reality is, when we had pencil and paper tests, people still cheated sometimes, right? But the industry addressed it as best they can and continues to address it in a really, really powerful way. So doing things like banning AI, right, or blocking AI from schools or from different things, right? I think that those are the reactive bad responses to cheating, and I think we've got to get educate the politicians and the qualifications authorities to say, hey, yeah, this is something we're working on. It is a challenge, but there are a lot of ways that we can address this in a really positive way that benefit you and the end users in a much more powerful way, because we've embraced that technology.
Got it. And the approaches that the two parties that you're talking about get impacted the most, in terms of being risk averse, right? And I think at a certain level, everybody wants to kind of be safeguarded. Everybody wants to be risk averse, but knowing what the possible repercussions are, knowing what the drawbacks are, I think holds the key, right, towards what we are kind of planning towards.
Yeah, you've got to be informed.
Miguel, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I 100% with Paul. I think politicians or the public opinion, right, which ultimately exposes the politicians on these cases, it is very important. It's a key stakeholder that we need to manage and support them, because they need to understand, and I think transparency is key in these cases of what was the prior situation before implementing, for example, a digital exam, and what is the post situation after this. We have seen even some digital exams being paused or being kept in paper because the first attempt on digital was going bad, and when they tried to make this equitable, digitally accessible, it went bad for one reason or another. And then the decision of the politician, because they didn't want to be anymore, let's say, exposed in front of the media, the decision was, no, let's continue with paper and pencil on this assessment. And I think the difference is that when you are delivering a paper exam, it is very difficult to first of all identify if there has been like massive cheating, and then who is to blame. There is no one to blame. It's like the system, people has been doing that, and you cannot blame the printing machine, or you cannot blame the person that was picking up the exams from the test centers, right? But when there is a reputable assessment organization behind a digital exam, it is very easy to say, okay, who was the company deploying this assessment across the country or across the state? Then it's very easy to point by the media a couple of figures that make this a way to expose the companies behind. So that's why I think it's been a bit of pressure against the digital exams, but still, after the result is proven, that is the way to move forward from the paper and pencil.
Got it. No, the thought process definitely, I think everybody's a bit confused, or at least was maybe 3-4 years back, right? Whether you kind of do pen and paper, you go digital, they were kind of taking a step back, step forward, a little bit confused. But I think we also see it in our space where everybody has a clear goal that they do want to move forward. And, of course, there are going to be challenges, there are going to be risks, but how we kind of get informed of them, how we kind of mitigate them, how we kind of, build strategies to protect ourselves against them would, kind of be the key for us here.
Yeah, and I think it is very important to show to our stakeholders what are the advantages of digital exams versus traditional methods, because those ones seems that when something goes wrong, we tend to forget what are the benefits that we are getting. So it is important to always do this analysis and what are you trading off when you are keeping your assessments on paper.
No, absolutely. And you've gone right ahead to my next question, Miguel, which is, and this is one which I get from a lot of the folks that I speak with, right? And it's a difficult one to find balance on. What is an acceptable trade-off? I know, for institutions to consider, right? And they must accept, in the new age that we live. I know when we talk about, there are multiple parties that come in here, right? You have, the candidate experience, you have the overall authenticity of the exam, you have security, compliance. So as an organization, or as somebody who's looking to build an assessment, administer assessments, Jouko, in your experience, what's the trade-off, right? What's an acceptable trade-off that institutions must go for, saying that, okay, if I'm trying to kind of go to strict in terms of my framework, the experience gets impacted, or vice versa? In your opinion, what's the view there?
What's the right level of trade-off? That is not. I'm a psychologist. I will always say on every question it depends. There's always nuance. I think governance and defensibility in general are top priorities for all our clients, especially for, I would say, talent assessment leaders. And I do agree with Paul a little, and also the previous discussion with Miguel. on the politicians, or let's say the public opinion. All these people read the news and they get worried. They get questions from the C-level on, hey, how do we deal with that? What do we do with trust? What do we do with cheating? And then what happens 9 out of 10 times, at least in my industry, is that they upload that to the vendor. They say, okay, what do we need to do? What is the right balance that we need to have? And I think that's close to impossible for us to answer. I mean, there's a lot of employer branding is a huge topic. What do you do with employer branding? What's the level of uncertainty that is tolerable? So how much can you accept, or how much friction can you create for a candidate? Normally, there was a time where every click that a candidate makes to apply was one too many. That's impossible if you want to do more security and more, if you want to be more sure. That just doesn't work. So are we overcorrecting? I think what people also forget, there's the accessibility and I would say inclusion element. There's also a lot of legislation there around accessibility, WCHG. So what everything that happens on the browser. Is a screen read cool? Do we have special measurements, special arrangements for people with disabilities? So then we trade in one risk for another risk, also from a legal perspective. I think for me, the most important thing actually is that, one, it's owned by the client. So it's us, people like us, being good consultants and showing those trade-offs. So what is it? Do you want to be more sure? Do you want to focus on your candidate experience? How many candidates do you have? What's the efficiency? What's the cost? What's the pressure? And then agree with the right balance and also review it and monitor it over time. So see what it does. But sorry, there's not just one answer. It's in high volume situations, you hear from candidates, the more you focus on proctoring, then it increases anxiety, whatever you do. It feels unfair sometimes. There's an effect on people with specific needs and constraints. And that's a trade-off. And you could be fine, or things fine, don't understand it wrong, but that's not much you can do about that at that moment in time. And I would like clients, organizations also to own that decision.
No, wonderful. I think it's again in your perspective, and like you said, I mean, all of us in our definite roles are consulting. It's all about being ensuring that everybody's kept aware, and then they're making a conscious decision of which way they would like to tip, knowing what the pros and cons are. I mean, that's probably the best way that we can guide them.
Help by data to show that. Yes.
Perfect. Paul, your thoughts on that?
Jouko covered it beautifully. I couldn't have said it better. It's a trade-off all along, and you've got to let the customer has to make that end decision, right? I can't make that decision for them. We don't own most of our tests. We deliver them and we score them, but we want our customers to make that decision. And we typically, in situations regarding security, bring in experts like Talview or another group if someone's interested. But we bring you in because you're experts in security. Right? I'm not an expert in security. I'm an expert in AI and a lot of other fields in assessment, but not in security. So we want you to come in and explain to the customer, here's the risk profile, right? And here are the things that work and don't work, and we work on it as a team to sort of balance those things out. But that's it.
Miguel, do you agree with the group? It's all about consulting and informing.
Yes, I think we have to take into account as well the type of assessment that you are delivering, and what is going to be the cost of this control, right? Because the more control that you add to the assessment, that higher cost is gonna bring operational difficulties on the delivery. Probably, as we were talking at the beginning, AI is helping students to cheat, but probably AI can help us as well to detect and to reduce that, for example, cheating probability or cheating detection, false positives, to detect this with technology, leveraging AI, and that will have to find the right balance. What is the number of false positives that you want, increasing the security or decreasing the security? So this discussion is very important with the customer, and depending how is the exam. If it's a very high stakes exam, obviously that's gonna have to be there. But it is important to consider all the factors, because when planning the exam, again, we believe that is really important design this from the beginning and not try to add all these security measures as patches and afterthought, because then it's going to be very difficult really that all the data points are consistent and try to monitor the usability of the test and the cheating risk.
Got it. I think, Miguel, what you're saying is it's important for us to measure right off the bat and kind of get things started from a consistent level base, so that we're able to kind of have a baseline where we're measuring from and not kind of running behind the fact, not kind of saying, okay, this happened, so now we put in this happened, so now we put in this. I mean, coming in from experience, ensuring that we can put in everything possible to make kind of the best effort there. Wonderful. What I would like to do is now kind of take it towards the last part of the questions that I would have, right, for the panel. We've heard all about the risks. We've heard all about the ways that we've seen the different kind of methodologies that are used, what our opinions are in terms of have we fallen behind or are we kind of meeting the right set of trade-offs. What does the future hold like? I would like to understand that. Is the future about kind of building in tighter controls, better controls, or kind of just about being smarter and kind of being ahead of the curve? Jouko, from your viewpoint, right, in your space, what does the future hold like? What do you see, maybe in the next couple of years as the way ahead?
I used to be focused on, if you do assessments in general, the other thing that you can really do to make sure that people are more honest and the assessment becomes more reliable, etc., is to make sure that it's beneficial for people to be honest. I also start to realize that I'm probably getting old. Maybe that's a bit of an old school way of thinking. You could do more than that. But I truly believe as a human being, that's the only thing you can really do to make sure that it's important for someone to do that. This is who I am. This is my level of experience, etc., etc. But it could be reasons why people want to be better than they really are. And I think it's then more about, with your phrase, is that smarter trust. Tighter controls, yes, but it's sort of a hygiene factor. It's also about technology erase that it will be erased forever. The smarter trust. And what we do in the world of leadership assessment, for instance, is what you call triangulation. I would call it, not sure. Yeah, that translates well. So you use multiple data points to predict something. And the more data points you have, the more reliable it is, the more difficult it's also to cheat. So that's an element of it. So you can use psychometric assessment, you can use an interview, you can use performance data, depending on what's the situation. So that does help. And then, but that's a bit out of scope probably for this discussion. You could also think about verifiable credentials, but that's a discussion beyond this panel. I'm aware of that. I've been involved in a few initiatives there as well, where you proof stamp the information and you reuse the information further down the line. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. I think what you're saying is you definitely need to get smarter. And the ways around it could be many. It could be, using different forms of testing, using different benchmarks, and using, like you said, the triangulation approach, or kind of using models that help you kind of predict it, better. But, Paul, your viewpoint in terms of the future.
So a caveat, if I could predict the future, I'd probably be on a yacht in the Mediterranean right now and not working on some AI projects in the assessment industry. I think two things, and sort of dovetailing into what Jouko said. So one, you've got to add value to your assessment, right? What's the value you get out of it? And I think so often in assessment, we try and freeze it in time, and rather than adding value and looking at what additional benefits can I get out of this, as Miguel was saying about moving to online testing and those sorts of things. And the second thing that I would say that we're working on related to that, many jobs have moved to an online environment where we have the ability to track every keystroke, every engagement, every other piece. And our dream, and we've got some investment going into this right now, which is, can we measure people without them realizing they're being measured, or again, with their permission? But right, can we track things almost like an Internet of Things in the production industry? Can we get enough data points on people that we don't have to sit them down at a computer and say, for 3 hours, take this test, and then I'm going to tell you whether or not you're a good candidate or you're a good doctor or a good lawyer. What we're trying to do is there a better way, right? And literally blowing up this notion of a test is a moment in time. And the real challenge with that, and I don't take that lightly, is that there are that's intrusive at some level for people, and so you've got to figure out, how do I balance what's intrusive and what's evaluating them and assessing them, not for punitive reasons but for development reasons, right? And how do I take them further? And so in particular in education, a lot of things happen in learning management systems now, and so students engage or don't engage with content, and then you can do activities. You can really measure people without a test, frankly. And this is not a new notion. Facebook has been doing this for a long time, profiling us. And that's really what I think, where I think assessment industry needs to move carefully in that direction for the future.
Very interesting thought in terms of kind of taking it from one shot, like you said, 3 hour, 2 hour assessment into a continuous evaluation, so to say, right? Where and rightly put, in terms of doing a continuous evaluation rather than kind of trying to fit everything in one way, which will give you probably even a better perspective on the candidate, rather than that one instance that the candidate might or might not be his best on, for whatever reasons or external factors as well, right?
Yeah, we end up with billions of data points rather than 150 data points, right? I think we have billions of data points to track people, and that's really fascinating. Again, I recognize the big brother nature of it, but I think it's somewhere we need to explore at least and see if it will work.
Yeah,
absolutely. Miguel, your thoughts from probably somewhere in the Mediterranean, if you were to be able to tell the future, but your thoughts on that.
I think the key message of Paul is really looking at the future, right? And one of that will be the ideal world. One of the challenges that we have in the industry that we are is that in many cases we tend to work with minors, and that data privacy, it is really strict. So in ideal world, you will be measuring indeed what is the lifelong learning of students, because that's really what you are going to be measured against when you're applying for a job, which is the ultimately objective. So we need to find that balance, right? And our stakeholders, again, which is the politicians and the society, need to understand what is the greater good that we want to achieve measuring this, because there is infinite data points, and coming back to just a regular assessment and how to try to prevent cheating and more about smarter trust. Definitely we should go for a smarter trust and leveraging the data points that we gather even at the specific assessment. We don't realize that it's not only about answering right or wrong the question. It's about the thought process that you are having when you are exposed to such a question. How do you interact with a question? Do you select one option? Do you unselect it? How do you move your mouse? All these data points can be leveraged to assess, okay, is this what is the probability that students are cheating? So the ideal world is that leveraging the lifelong learning to kind of break it into micro credentials. But in the meantime, looking at the data that we have available during the exam, and a smarter trust being leveraged with AI will be a very important point in the future.
Got it. I think what you're saying is, being able to leverage AI to benefit the test taker and the examiner as well, right? In terms of the organization, being able to monitor different activities during the test pattern. I know we spoke of all of it under the realm of acceptability, right? Whether it's keystroke analysis, multiple other data points to be able to leverage and kind of build out a framework that kind of brings in everything that we need at the right balance, of course, keeping in mind the right consent as well. I think, wonderful kind of discussion from across all the board, right? Across all the topics that we had, definitely kind of brings in a lot of perspective, a lot of kind of thought for the future for all of us. And in terms of even the different experiences that we have here as well. We've got from leadership assessments to kind of public exams to different sort of corporate exams that are kind of available with which you folks kind of help and your organizations help. So would really like to thank you. In terms of just to kind of sign off the session, I think we've heard today exam breakdowns don't just happen right now. They've been there since the ancient times. We've all done it in some way or the other. Are they getting smarter and difficult? Yes. But they kind of build through quiet patterns, which kind of repeatedly are being overlooked, and signs that are probably there. But the real opportunity ahead, for us isn't just kind of build tighter controls, but to kind of rebuild the trust in the very design of the assessment framework, in the very design of the delivery process, in the very design of how we utilize the data coming out of the different assessments and the different methodologies to kind of reclaim what we would want to be as the perfect world. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate the views and perspectives of everybody here. I'm pretty sure the audience as well is going to have a great kind of view from the discussion pointers that we had. Thank you so much for your time. You do have a good day ahead, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you. It was fun to join.
Thank you. Bye-bye.